the liftoff and launch, and along with Jamie, David, Rebecca, and Scott. Yeah. I think we all know that my mic's on, so thank you. Besides producer of the Close-It Summit, Innovate Educate is heavily involved in workforce across New Mexico and Colorado. We used to be national and even worked in Nigeria. And after the COVID, we decided to focus on 2 states and have a better life, right? Less airplanes. So we are very committed to those 2 states. And I'm sorry, just ignore that. We have a lot of contacts around the technician economy across the country. As part of that, Innovate Educate is really excited to discuss with a few people here. We are going to launch the technician economy in New Mexico and Colorado, and we're very committed to this because both states need technicians. I believe that changing the language from, that's somebody doing the trades, and by the way, which sector is that trade? Union 412 has tons of technician training, but it's for many sectors, right? So from now on, if you're at a cocktail party and your child is in community college, you don't have to say, oh, they're in the trades. There's something that people have always discounted about the trades. And now we say they are part of the technician economy. It's big. It's huge. It is what's going to make our country continue to thrive and be innovative, and no time better than now to have these really smart people working on this together. And this is a small group of many people who want to be part of that argument. So what that means is in New Mexico, I will be working very closely with Tracy and CNN, who really has a majority of technician opportunities. However, we also have 2 defense laboratories, 2 national labs sitting in New Mexico, Sandia and Los Alamos National Laboratory. So I want to give David first a chance to speak on Sandia's role and the importance of technicians to your pipeline and how you feel you can engage around it as we lift off. I had to make sure we were taking off.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I work at Sandia National Laboratories, and I mostly work at the intersection of R&D and kind of the real world, right? So I work in a group that helps transition technologies and capabilities out of the labs and bring similar expertise into the labs to support our mission spaces. So one thing that's become really clear over the last few years across some areas that are common in New Mexico and Colorado, so looking at hypersonics, which is kind of a subcategory of aerospace, quantum computing and sensing, and even fusion, which is another big one for both states right now, is that the bottleneck for us deploying these technologies and getting these verticals scaled isn't invention anymore, it's really is deployment. So for hypersonics, good example here, there's a large company that just moved to New Mexico, Castilian. At the labs, we can model extreme conditions, design materials, run simulations, but at some point you just have to build this vehicle. You have to be able to machine it, and integrate it, and test it, and then do that all again and do it quickly. For quantum, it's a really similar feeling right now. We're moving it out of the lab and into real systems for the first time, so we're starting to see computers. But those systems are still really early. They don't just work. They have to be set up, they have to be tuned and maintained. And if you don't have people who can actually do that work, the technology just kind of stays stuck where it is. Fusion is another really clear example right now. There's a lot of real momentum, so companies are building hardware, they're starting to site facilities, but what they need now isn't just better physics and better models. They need people to fabricate components, assemble systems, and operate them reliably. So that's technician work. That's all boots on the ground work. And that's what's missing, and that's, I think, the pattern that's starting to emerge across all of these verticals, is that things don't fail dramatically without the technician workforce. They just stall. They don't start. So the shift is pretty simple right now. Innovation absolutely starts with discovery, but it's also about whether you can deploy. So this isn't abstract, this is very regional. It's workforce and it is technicians. So we're excited to be a part of the conversation. We're excited to see New Mexico and Colorado and the Southwest be a place where things are actually getting built.
Right, thank you. Jamie Granato is not only, he's a really Innovate Educate. He was a co-founder of Innovate Educate with me 20 years ago. We were just backstage going, wow, what a 20 years. Jamie, when I first met him, was part of the technician economy in a huge way at Intel. And, you know, I was so fortunate to have him chair and help lead the way that Innovate Educate got to do the work that we've done. So Jamie, you've been at economic development, you've done finance. What do you think about the technician economy?
I love it. I'm going to stand up so I'm not hiding behind everybody here. Well, 20 years ago when Jermaine walked into my office, we had very specific issues in terms of finding those technicians, similarly to what we just heard about in Arizona or Sandia Labs or Los Alamos. And we had to rethink how we find the right talent. And the regular pipelines, whether it be through a college track or a community college track or no track at all, just didn't work right. And I think the technician economy is an idea whose time has come. I kind of reflected over it. Even as an engineer in my past, I view myself as a technician as well, because a technician is someone that solves problems, has some very in-depth skills, and more than ever today, has in-depth or more and more in-depth technical skills to solve problems using AI and other technologies that are emerging. So I think this collapse of skill sets coming into one individual and enabling that individual to be incredibly productive and helping all of our industries and our economy to grow and be competitive, I think it's the right time to announce this. I just wanted to conclude to say that Innovate Educate, we started 20 years ago, and our strength has been convening. And so we're at the culmination of 20 years of convening, and I'm really excited to be able to take those ideas and turn them into tactical, practical plans for New Mexico, working with our partners, and continue the dialogue. This is not the end. This is going to be another 20 years of us navigating through a very complex world to help students, help our grandchildren, children, ourselves to be competitive. And I'm looking forward to be able to convene and coordinate and work with all of you, especially here in New Mexico and Colorado, to figure out ways to continue to dialogue despite some of our barriers and restrictions that we have based on our institutions. So I really appreciate the ability to break out. No idea is bad. And so I'm looking forward to taking those discussions that have happened over the last 20 years or so and put them into practice through the technician economy.
Hard to ignore. Oh, I was going to do Rebecca next, but let's do you. Let's see who needs the last. Rebecca. Los Alamos National Laboratory, I mean, I consider myself northern New Mexico more than central. We couldn't do so much without Rebecca and everything the community partnerships office does at Lambeau, from providing sponsorship to this, to providing Union 412 and all the trades bus, the technician economy bus that goes across northern New Mexico. And I'm super excited to continue to work with Rebecca and her team on the need for technicians that I know Lambeau has a lot of need. So do you want to kind of share what you're thinking about this conversation?
Well, I think, sorry, I'm also standing, I'm a little challenged behind there. You know, as someone like others on the stage who were both higher education and workforce development for the last many years, we won't talk about it. I think one of the things that I've heard over and over and over again, and we know this, is that gap in the language, right? How do you talk about what the skills that we need are with learning outcomes or curriculum development if we're talking about our higher ed partners, right? So what this is doing is hopefully beginning to bridge that gap, right? How do we look at what are some of the primary foundational skills? How do we put all these things under an umbrella and start to create that language and the vocabulary that we can all share? What complicates this, of course, though, is that, again, technician. I can only speak from my personal experience, but technician, right, can be everything from what you're talking about in terms of fabrication and manufacturing to what's happening in R&D spaces, right? So all of that covers technician. Now we're going to complicate that with AI, constant changes in technology, constant changes in the work that's being done. So how are we creating not just that shared vocabulary, but a shared vocabulary that can continue to evolve and grow as we continue this work? And we know that these needs are going to go and go and go and grow. So on top of that, to Jemaine's point, and again, I recognize this is repeating some of what's already been said, is, you know, we're changing a narrative, not just about a caste system in terms of workforce in this state. For me, it's about the state, right? But of course, it's national. How are we changing that narrative? Because to everyone's point on the stage, these are absolutely required jobs. If we do not have these positions in place, then you're talking about work not getting done and things not happening. So do not disbelieve that this is the backbone of so much of the economy that we're working with, particularly in this state.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Scott Bass, who the director of Colorado operations for Innovate Educate, and you are a technician probably in some form or fashion.
So what I'm excited about, if you think a couple of slides ago, we were talking about two concentric circles that were meeting together in a job. So it is now time to start to do that even better than what has been done in the states before. So if you start thinking about how we can take the workforce data, probably from LightCast, probably from some local demand, how can we figure out what is truly needed? So what are the jobs that are hot? What are employers looking for the credentials, for the skills, and then really connect them over to the local training programs that are a direct connection to building those skills. So how is it that we can sit down and say, is it this job, that job, which part of the state? So in Colorado, just thinking through healthcare techs, where in the state? Probably everywhere is sure that. Well, what are the right training programs and how can we fill them? Auto and aircraft techs, where are the training programs for that and what part of the states need those? So talk about quantum and optics. Aerospace, it's kind of interesting to think about not only is certain skill sets needed, sometimes you need a security clearance to go along with some of these jobs. Where do you find people with that can then pick up these skills? So, and then there's always, the electricians are across so many different industries. They're needed in quantum, they're needed everywhere. So how do we get electricians, plumbers, things like that? But how do we do that not only in the rural areas, but in the urban areas and connected to where people want to live? So that'll be our next step there.
So I think that is our liftoff of Skills to Jobs.
Thank you, Janae, and Jamie, and David, and Rebecca, and Scott. What you just witnessed here is that liftoff. Imagine that rocket just starting to shoot up into the air. Couple things that I'd like to just bring to your attention is on technicianeconomy.org, the national website that goes live today. The National Technician Role Library is available there. One of the really interesting facts that was just mentioned here was, Rebecca, you both, Rebecca and David said this, is that the economy is going to stop. Right now we're seeing a 1 to 14 engineer to technician ratio, deployment in a field. What's really interesting about skilled trades is that we're seeing the journeyman to skilled trade technicians at around 1.3.5 for the ratio. Why is that important? It's the skill set. It's that same core that is beginning to drive skilled trades as it is driving the technician model. So just keep that in mind as we now move into with Chris leading the way.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Thanks for coming to this special convening. The team here is also super excited to launch this technician economy. And we were asked a couple fundamental questions for the next cohort here, which consists primarily of investors, for-profit investors, social impact investors, grant makers, government organizations seeking capital for innovation in these end markets around the future of work. We're going to hear from a few of them momentarily. But really the question we were asked is, what's real about the technician economy and what does it take for it now to scale nationally? And the biggest fundamental thing that it takes to scale nationally is capital and capitalization. My name is Chris Kern. I'm the CEO of Titan Partners. We're a globally focused investment bank focused exclusively on education technology and global knowledge services. We cover pre-K through 12 markets, post-secondary education, and corporate learning and development markets we serve. We're fundamentally involved with social impact and moving the dial on human innovation and human development with every task that we're involved in. So we sell companies, we buy companies, we invest in companies in these end markets. And I have been and lived through the last 30 years of doing this, every cycle that has existed. If you asked me 2 years ago, where would the capital supply to fuel companies like Unmuddled and those who will benefit from being participatory in the technician economy, it would be in the early stage from institutional and social impact venture capital. That market has fundamentally collapsed in a dramatic way over the last couple of years for a number of reasons. Putting aside AI and defense and markets, fund formation is down 90%, and the type of capital that's going to need to be here to persist to drive the speed that we think that this technician economy can complete the great success story that's ahead of it is going to look very different. It's going to be a blended and graded model. It will be a combination of grantors, philanthropic funds, social impact investors, high net worth individuals, billionaire family offices looking for human development, human impact, and market exposure. And it's going to be different. There's going to be a lot of flexibility, and it's also, from my perspective, a call to arms to many of the philanthropies that are here to let's get up and go. You're going to hear some data points on why the transitions that we're going through today in our economy, many of them driven by AI, are going to make this so critical and such a central piece to our economy, national security, global health, and an array of other benefits. Gazillions of companies we've been involved with, I have sold or invested or been with institutional capital or many of the types of profiles you're going to hear speak today in a moment, and we're all of the same mindset. It's going to take a collaborative effort. Some of these types of groups have invested together as collectives and syndicates in the past, but it has to become much more pronounced in the call to arms and call to actions now. I want to first introduce Nikki De Silva. Nikki is with the U.S. Chamber Foundation, 501c3, part of the U.S. National Chamber of Commerce, and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be with you all, and I think there was a question for me just to kind of think about what does this mean for employers